Segment on it.
I've not seen the History Channel segment, but the movie, you know, it was a pretty good movie, I thought. If you're talking about Patton, the movie with
Yes.
George C. Scott, that was a pretty darn good movie. I thought it captured Patton and the way he was and what he was up against, and I thought it was a very good movie.
From what has your research shown about the wreck? I mean, from what we see, and most of us are gauging our history on the movie, it looked like nothing more than a mere fender bender, but isn't it correct that the other two passengers, which were in the front of the car, walked away, and Patton, who's in the back seat, which you would think would be the safest place, breaks his neck and dies?
Yeah, that is true. That's part of the mystery. It was an accident in which that truck suddenly turned in front, no signal, and the Patton car had just been stopped at a railroad track. So it hadn't gotten up much speed, somewhere between 10 and 30 miles an hour when the impact occurred. And there were three people in his car. There was General Gay on his left in the back seat with Patton, and there was a driver in front. And neither Gay nor the driver suffered any injuries at all. Patton is said to have flown through the air because it was a large limousine and he had a lot of space back there, and to have hit his head. He ends up with a broken neck, a huge gash on his face, and those two are not even touched. So it was very strange what happened. In addition, this was in a remote area that nobody was around, and suddenly, I mean, everybody came out of the woodwork. There was even a general there, and the driver of the truck that hit him was whisked away and disappeared, and there were two passengers with him. Those two men disappeared. It's just strange from the very beginning. So that was a very mysterious accident.
What had inspired you to get interested in this subject and write a book on it?
Well, I was told that there was a person who was saying, see, I was like most people. I thought this was just an accident, and I was told by a cousin of mine who runs a detective agency that there was a person who said no, the man had been assassinated, and this person had been there. So this guy was Douglas Posada, a former OSS agent. The OSS, of course, was the forerunner of the CIA. And I went to see Douglas Posada. He was a sterling OSS agent. He'd been dropped behind the enemy line. He had organized the French resistance, won many medals. This guy was really something, sort of a James Bond and Lawrence of Arabia. But he confessed to me. I got him when he was very old and he'd had a stroke. He had been a clandestine all his life. He had been involved in all the secret operations. He had been an assassin for the OSS, and he said to me that he had been ordered by General Wild Bill Donovan, the head of the OSS, to cause that accident, and he had in fact done that. Now they had not, Patton had not died of that accident, and the NKVD, which is the Russian intelligence service, the forerunner of the KGB. They were in on this too, because the OSS had had a liaison with the NKVD since 1943. And anyway, the NKVD, he said, had finished Patton off in the hospital. You know, what happened to Patton in the hospital was very strange. He was brought there, he was thought to be dying, which he was, but he's a tough guy, and he rallied, and he was ready to be flown home to Boston. And suddenly he had a downturn. And within 14 hours, he was dead. He was so well that they were about to fly him back to Boston. Then he has a downturn. Well, Douglas Posada told me that the Russians got in there and poisoned him with something that mirrored an embolism. And embolism, of course, is a clot that might travel to anywhere in your body and stop your blood flow and either give you a stroke or a heart attack. Well, there was no autopsy performed on Patton, so he died as a result of that. And I might say that in addition to Posada telling me all this and giving me his secret diaries, which detail a plot to kill Patton, I also found a intelligence officer who had served with Patton and was there at the time that this was all going on, and he was told by the Russians, by Russian spies that he was working with, that Stalin had ordered Patton's death. And he was told this 3 different times by very high-level people. He tried to tell the authorities. He ran into, he was eventually brought to Wild Bill Donovan and was literally chased out of Germany for fear of his life, and lived that way for many years. So there are 2 strong, so to speak, eyewitnesses involved in this case, and they both say that this occurred.
Sir, do you see this as a similar situation? Like, in my perspective, it's possible that, that governments throughout the world try to take out military leaders such as General Patton, particularly what they would consider rogue generals, possible threats to their political establishment, the elite. Of course, the Germans did this with Erwin Rommel.
Yes, I think very much so. This is, I grew up thinking that the era of political assassination began with John F. Kennedy in 1963. But now, I believe, it started with Patton. And as you pointed out, even Rommel did that. The war was a terrible thing, as everyone knows. It was the biggest war in history that we'd had up to that time, and probably since then. And it was very expedient. When you had a problem, you just killed the guy. And that's the way that all the governments were acting. Early on in the war, we know that several French, the Vichy French leaders were assassinated by the OSS when they became a problem. This is the way that we began to conduct our business, and it is something that we have to look at. I mean, you can't just be killing people because they disagree with you, and yes, this was part of that.
In closing, I want to thank you for joining us today, Mr. Wilcox, on The Real News. Is there any last words you would like to add, or tell our listeners how they can get your new book, Target Patton? And thanks again for joining us today on The Real News.
Well, thank you. You can get it at Amazon, or you can go to my website, www.robertkwilcox, and it'll show you how to get it. Regnery is the publisher, and they also will show you how to get it. It's a very, very big mystery, an important story, and thank you very much, Farron, for having me.
Thank you, sir. We're going to go to a break, and we'll come back with a little bit more news. There's a couple things we've got to cover before we can go to the phones, but we'll be back after the break. Give us an end time when you get timed up. All right, we're back on The Real News. We've got a video that was sent to us by a listener. As many of you probably know, there is some question as far as Barack Obama's constitutionality as far as being an American citizen, if he is legitimately fit to hold the office of president because of his American citizenship. So we've got a short video that was sent to us by a listener. If you send us stuff, we may just play it on the air. So let's go ahead and play that now.
Heard the rumors about Barack Obama's citizenship? These are the facts. The Constitution requires the president to be a natural-born citizen. Obama's grandmother said she was there when Barack was born in Kenya. Obama refuses to release his original birth certificate. Instead of a birth certificate, Obama's campaign posted a certification given to those born abroad. Experts have called even that document an obvious forgery. Obama attended school in Indonesia as Mary Sotoro, when only Indonesian citizens were permitted to attend. Obama's school records list his father as Lolo Sotoro, and Obama's citizenship as Indonesian. Obama traveled to Pakistan in 1981, when it was illegal to enter as a U.S. citizen. 16 lawsuits and 2 cases before the Supreme Court now challenge Obama's citizenship. Fact: our Constitution still matters.
We have covered some of this before. There was a court case, went all the way to Supreme Court. Phil Berg, attorney, was questioning this. So far, there's several states, I think, that has litigation covering this. Nothing has happened. I don't know if anything will come of it, but we want to cover the story. It is a necessary story, an important story, because we have seen our country try to drift so far away from